Hi, everyone. My name is Unos Pure, founder of the Neurodivergent Gift. And in partnership with Autism Society, for the month of April, we were triggered to really start conversations with a whole bunch of professionals in really understanding the journey of autism and how we, as parents and caregivers, can really get more information around how do we navigate this space. The purpose of the conversation is really around education, building community, and really if we can give one parent, one caregiver a better starting point on how they navigate this world with their kids, then we would have done our job. So far, we've had conversations really with therapists, we've had a conversation with the dentist, we've had conversations with teachers, and also we've had conversations with a financial planner. Today, to round off all of the conversations, we are chatting to the other aspect of therapy, which is the OT, the occupational therapist, and really trying to understand how all of this works together. What does it mean when my child is autistic and why do they need to go to therapy? And today I'm in conversation with Nicole, who was my son's OT for a good 3 years. For a good 3 years. So we started with her when he was three, when he was three, and he just turned 7 now. So yeah, so we're going to have that conversation, really unpacking what is OT, what does it mean, and why does it fit, and how does it fit into my world with a child who's autistic, and what should I be expecting within this space. So I'm going to let Nicole introduce herself. So Nicole,
Hi.
hi.
I love this. It's so mini and cute.
So who is Nicole? Why did you choose to be an OT? And why do you continue to do this?
Woo, that's loaded. My name's Nicole Johnston. I am a occupational therapist, and I am specialized in sensory integration and DIR floor time, which are two different approaches which link really beautifully in treating any child on the neurodiverse spectrum. I am an OT, honestly, and I will not lie through God's plan. I didn't know what I wanted to study. All my friends were applying for it, and I applied and got in. And I didn't love it at first. I was going to drop out. And then I worked at Rahima Musa and the Mother and Child Hospital. I didn't think I'd ever be a peds OT. And then there was just a few cases that just changed my life. And my father's had a stroke before I was born, and he's disabled. And that, in combination with finding out how my grandmother, who was a remedial therapist, worked with him and gave him a second chance at life, that kind of all just showed me how much impact you can have in someone's life, and if you can actually make living worth it, how much better that is. And I think that's what I do. And I think the reason I love with kids is I'm a child at heart. I'm a massive child. Anyone who knows me knows that. And I think I love the fact that I can play every day, but I love the fact that I can help kids be the best version of themselves. And I know that that's got such a long lasting, like such a cascading effect. Like it changes families, it changes kids, and for the rest of their lives, they're changed. And for me, that's just, it's a good feeling.
I love that. I think one of the things which is such a common thread in all the conversations was really the whole aspect of being called and purposed to be in the position that you're in, especially when it comes to working with children and working with little souls and hearts, and really being a part of that journey of how can I fit into this to really help them move from where they are to where we all hope and desire them to be. So I think one of the things also you said is that you love to play. Um, I know that when we started OT, and I remember sitting in this room, and I'm just like, so you're just gonna play? you just you just play, you just play, and I didn't know what do you mean? Like I've always known that children learn through play, but when I thought like OT, even with speech, so you guys are just playing in here. What is going on? And I think for me, that was when I really started trying to understand, okay, I know I've agreed to bring my child here, but what is this thing? So, what is OT? What is it meant to hopefully achieve at the end of the day? And why do we play?
And I love that. And I often, I don't even know if I told you guys, but I often, especially to the dads, I tell them that OT can look like an expensive play date. Like that's what it looks like, because you're like, okay. And I think, so OT in a nutshell, it's the joy of living. That is, so occupational therapy, when we talk about occupation, it's what we do every day.
Okay.
And
Okay.
we have kind of taken occupation to just mean work. But it's not.
Yes.
It's anything that you do in your life, whether it is making friends, spending time with loved ones, whether it's driving your car, whether it's looking after yourself and doing your daily routines. Anything that you do throughout your day that brings you joy is linked in occupational therapy.
Okay.
So for a child, their main occupations is friends, so social.
Yes.
It is play, which is
Yes.
like their main occupation.
Yes.
School, so academic kind of
Yes.
side,
Yes.
and then also the daily routine. So the ability to get dressed,
Yes.
bath myself, eat, all that stuff. We fall in like our daily activities.
Yes.
And the reason we use play is because it's how a child learns. And
Okay.
I love the fact that the more like science comes out and the more we can scan and see images of the brain, the more we actually understand how much of the brain is activated through play.
Okay.
Where previously we were all like, okay, we see it, but now we have the proof. And because a child learns through play so much, it's kind of a obvious if we don't use play, we're not going to get the most out of it.
Okay.
So for occupational therapy, we use structured play, well, not structured play, we use specific play and activities that the child is interested in
Okay.
to work on what is getting in the way of their daily living.
Okay. I love that. And then I think one of the things for me, once I wrap my mind around, okay, and I could start seeing the different play choices that you were having in the room, that, okay, this is going to help this and this and that. I think one of the examples is the tunnel. And you had like this material tunnel that it was the play of him going through the tunnel and getting to the other side. And what it did in our everyday life is that when he got dressed and he isn't freaking out when the jersey is going over his head, because that was the thing. And when I realized that, it clicked that, oh, this is what is actually happening. And especially his sensory profile. He's the kid who didn't like slime. When everyone was on just slime, he's just like, why?
Not a chance.
Like, I see it and everything. But I remember when you're playing with different textures and you're getting him to stick his hands in certain things. And what does it feel like? Does he like it? Does he not? And then really pushing it until now he's obsessed with it. Now he still has his moments where he can see that there's something on my hand and I need to get it wiped, but he isn't freaking out like how he used to, where we need to get it off now. And for me, I think when it comes to understanding how OT played a part, so when we started our journey, we obviously started through speech, because that was the immediate thing as parents that we saw was not coming through, was speech. And for me, I think that's generally most of the entry point for a lot of us as parents of kids with autism, is that there's the speech element aspect of it. So we started speech, had the assessment there, and part of the conversation and then the report that came back is that we also need to work concurrently or at the same time with OT. And then that's when you were brought into the picture. When we spoke to Ubohlale and she was explaining some of the markers of autism, she spoke about the sensory aspect of it. So I want to understand, when we talk about the sensory aspect of just autism, and then being asked to make sure that when we do speech, we also are partnering up with OT, how do those things work together? How does the OT aspect from a sensory point of view assist in then how my child, besides him learning how to be able to touch things that he wouldn't have touched before, being able to move throughout his day and not freak out, but what is the connection with speech?
And that's a big question because, they show that 90% of children on the spectrum have a sensory processing challenge.
Okay.
So 9 out of 10 kids.
Yes.
And to understand the impact, like the massiveness of that, is that your sensory systems is the foundation of all human being development.
That I didn't know.
So literally from the womb, when your child is in your womb, the only thing that they can do is experience sensory input.
Okay.
They can't react. They just feel, they sense.
Okay.
What is the sounds around me, the feeling of floating around, that movement,
Yes.
the warmth, everything that comes to them is just an experience.
Okay.
When they then are born and in the world, they then can start to react.
Okay.
And then we develop more of our motor responses.
Mm-hmm.
But the first experience a child had is all sensory.
Okay.
So if we understand that your sensory systems is the foundation for everything, if there's a challenge in there, it's going to naturally have a domino effect in everywhere else.
Okay.
And our sensory systems also are strongly linked to our feelings of being safe and regulated. So this is where it really impacts children on the spectrum, where they feel the world a lot more intensely often.
Yes.
And the world is often a scarier place because everything comes at me louder, more intense. We call it like a hyper. So everything's increased. And that then triggers in my body that fight, flight, fright response.
Okay.
So if my body is in that fight, flight, fight response and everything is scary and out to get me and dangerous, and when we think about that response, it's not logical. There's no cognitive, there's no reasoning. Mom is not actually going to hurt me. It's this, oh my goodness, I'm going to die kind of response. And your body automatically goes into survival mode. Now, I'm not going to want to communicate with you if I believe that you are out to kill me. So if I'm feeling unsafe and I'm feeling dysregulated, my openness to communication is non-existent. And that's the big link to speech. Because if our body is feeling off and we are feeling unsafe and we're feeling all over the place, we are not going to be open for communication. So from a speech perspective, you need them to be open for communication to work on the skills. So where OT comes in, we're like, okay, cool. Your sensory systems, there's things going on that's making the world too overwhelming. Making it really hard for you to connect and stay in the moment with someone. So we work on, okay, how do we regulate? How do we calm that nervous system down? How do we help the sensory systems understand input in a way that's not threatening? We make sense of this tunnel is not actually out to get me. This is what it feels like. My body understands it, kind of internalizes it, and then I can actually enjoy and experience it. Or I can say, you know what, I actually don't like that texture. That's okay. But it's not a threatening texture. It's not something that's out to get me. So that's how the sensory side hits the communication side. And then what we also want to do is through helping the body calm down, and kind of we call it regulation. We've spoken about that. As parents and as therapists, you share your calm with your child. We call that the co-regulation. So I use my calmness, share it, kind of lend it to you to help your body calm down. And in that moment, we have more of a kind of co-regulation and we can have some shared attention. And there we can actually then engage in the spinning top that's spinning around, and we can formulate more of a connection and then work on other skills. But it all starts on that foundation. And that's often why, like you said, most parents start on the speech therapy side because the lack of communication or talking, like verbal talking, is obvious. Where a lot of parents, they're like, oh, my child's a picky eater. It's just the way he is. Oh, he doesn't like certain textures. It's just the way he is. Oh, he cries a lot, or he struggles with change. It's just the way. We've kind of moved our lives around it. And then we often say that kids come to therapy when the parents have hit those pressure points. When something is kind of the child's profile and what the environment demands is now a mismatch. So it's fine when we're at home, but now we move to preschool. And now the wheels are falling off because suddenly the environment and now the child can't cope. Or there's a bigger change when another sibling comes in, or something happens when actually now we realize that our child is not coping in what we need them to do, and then we need to seek some extra assistance.
How then do I know? So we said the entry point of speech is very clear because we have the known markers of by the time they are 16 months or 18 months, 2 words or XYZ words and all of that jazz. And then you get to a point where you just like, this child isn't communicating past this written down expectation. And so then we seek that. What is the thing that should trigger me with OT to actually say, let's check this out? Because like you say, he's just a picky eater. How do I know that he is indeed just a picky eater? He just has a unique palate that likes sushi and not this pap and place that we're cooking in this house, versus no, he shouldn't be picky like this, or let's go. How will I know that this is something I should check out and not necessarily just, oh, it's just the way that they are?
And that's such a hard question because the reason I said to you at the start that the asking what is OT is such a
Yeah.
hard
Yeah.
question, because
Yeah.
it's so all encompassing. When we think about the joy of living what we do from today to tomorrow is so different. And I often say to parents, I'm like, listen, parenting is hard to begin with. I commend every single parent. It's insane. But when it gets to a point where it becomes that level of hard that makes you question. Like, I believe strongly in a mom gut.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
know Betlali does as well.
Yes.
Like, I
Yes.
think a lot of, and I'll be honest, I think any therapist who works with kids, we know there's a thing called a mom gut.
Okay.
And I can see when you feel like,
Something's
there's
not right.
something. There's something like, yes, they're picky, but like,
no, man.
this is a little bit too much. Or
Yes.
yes, they're like, if you're cutting labels out of every single clothing item, and and I always say, if it impacts function.
Okay.
So if you've got a kid now who can't go to a birthday party, or is anxious about going to a birthday party because what am I going to eat? Or I don't want to go to this birthday party because it's going to be a bounce and it's going to be too loud and intense and I'm not going to be able to cope with that.
Yeah.
Or I get anxious to do something or I get stressed. Or for a family, it becomes a thing.
Okay.
Where we all actually start avoiding a park, or we all start avoiding something because we know that they're not going to cope.
Yeah.
That's not how I believe life should be lived.
Okay.
Yes, there are ways that we will always adjust environments and know where it is. But if you realize that you're like walking on eggshells around everything, it shouldn't be that way.
Okay.
And then we see, okay, why? What is your child struggling with? Why is the world so hard? Because life is hard, but it shouldn't be that hard.
Okay.
It really shouldn't.
Okay, cool. So, I've come to the point, either I come through the entry point of speech where they've recommended, please go also get an OT assessment, and let's see also if there's something that we need to work on here that is going to assist this. Or, like you say, we are now walking on eggshells as a family. We're trying to figure this thing out where it's just becoming too hard. So I've got those entry points that we've noted now. I now come to OT. What do I expect? What should I expect when I walk in through the door as a parent?
So I'm not going to speak to how other people, I'll say how I work.
Yes.
And I think a big thing for me is that, I say this from the start with parents, it's a partnership.
Yeah.
So how it works is we first want to see what's going on in your child's body. Okay. We always start with an assessment to see exactly where in their sensory systems are there challenges so we can work on them. Because it's also not about, needle in a haystack. We need to find it.
Yeah.
We don't want to just throw it to the wind and hope something sticks.
Yeah.
So we want to see that. And when we understand your child's profile, now through one assessment, we're not going to understand your child's everything. Okay. As a parent, you are your child's expert.
Yeah.
You know your kid
Yes.
through and through. But as a professional, I can say, okay, this is what I'm seeing. Is it linking? And then I always find out from parents, what are your goals? So what do you want? Because as I said, OT is so all encompassing. I can want to work on their pencil grip. I can want to work on this. But if it does not matter in your life, there's no point. So what is important to you? What's important to your child? So maybe for you, you want them to be able to tolerate getting their haircuts.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We want them to have a manageable fro. We don't want a crazy one. Or we just want them to be able to put a jersey on when it's 2 degrees outside.
Yes.
That's important. Where the other stuff, let's say him writing his name and that is important, but not as important.
Yes. Yeah.
Then we work out, okay, what are our goals? And that's going to direct our therapy. So for OT, for me, it's like I said, it's all play-based. So because I'm sensory integration trained, I have a lot of sensory equipment.
Yeah.
So I have the suspension, I have the ball pit, I've got all the stuff that I know is going to afford opportunities for that kid to seek out that input.
Yeah.
And it's about following what they want to do. So you guys in your journey, you always came in the sessions at the start. And that was a big thing for me, is that having the parents in the sessions, because I want to show you how I regulate your kid so you can then work on it.
Yeah.
Because there's no point in me regulating your child in this space and then sending them to you home.
Yes.
And you don't
know what to do there. Yeah.
Because it doesn't help.
Yeah.
So I could have the most regulated child and here, great. Wow, naughty badge. But it does not have an impact in the family. So for me, it's a collaborative. It's a parents on board all the time.
Yeah.
And we work together. And I kind of always tell parents it's a 3-for-1 therapy. So I'm working on your kid, but I'm also working on you as parents and teaching you how to regulate yourself and how you can then regulate your kid.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's kind of that whole big approach, and it's a journey. And we spoke about, for me, I like to have end goals or set times. So I say,
Yes.
okay, cool, we're going to work for a certain amount of time. These are our goals, and then we're going to reevaluate, and then we're going to see, are we on the right path? Do we need to shift? Do we need to change? But it's a continuous conversation.
Yeah.
And as a child grows, sometimes we need to make changes, sometimes we need to change.
Yeah.
So it's always a journey, but the first step and my first most important thing when a child walks through that door is building a relationship with them
Yeah.
and building a relationship with the family.
Okay.
Once we have that, and once we all believe we're on the same team, and I always want a parent, when they go to a family function and the random Google on the side ask them, why is my child an OT?
Yeah.
I want them to be able to answer with confidence
Okay.
because of X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
I don't want them to be able to say, oh, they're just going to go play.
Okay.
Like that equipping
Yes.
to be able to know. Because I
Yeah.
think in this whole journey, I really empathize with parents. It's scary. And there's a lot you don't know. And to just feel empowered and equipped to know that this is how my child's been helped, or this is what's going on. Like that gives you some semblance of, okay, power in
Yeah.
an altogether like unempowering situation.
Yes. Two things you mentioned. You mentioned parents sitting in the session so that they, first of all, understand what actually happens in this space, and then also they themselves gaining the tools that they need to regulate themselves, and also how do I take what happens in this room into our home now and to help us achieve the goals that we have. The one thing, and then the other thing was about the goals and how long the actual process is going to take. So I want to ask first regarding the parents being in the room. I know that at times we also brought our younger son in.
Yeah.
Is there value also in having siblings being able to experience the space so that because they're playing at home also, but I also think because my youngest also doesn't know his brother to be anything but who he is.
Yeah.
And so he's never had an inkling of he's different from others type
Yeah.
of thing. That's just who he is, to a point where we used to ask him to translate for us because
I remember that.
please translate. What is your brother trying to say to us? And he's just be like, come on, now he's just asking for water. Like, come on. But coming into the room, is there value for that to have, if just like a parent comes in and understands that if they're siblings, if they're also able to come in and just see what's happening for a better understanding of how we then are able to sibling together when we get home?
No, extremely. And I at the start, I say to parents sometimes, let's just start the two, me and the kid, and the parents, let's build the relationship. Let me understand him. But especially if there's challenges with the sibling, or let's say there's fighting, or like sometimes when his brother came, it was actually the best sessions because there were sometimes activities that I knew he wanted to try do, but his body didn't understand the plan of how to do it.
Okay.
So like the one day I remember was like jumping off onto the cloud.
Yes.
And he's like, I understand the idea of it, but my body can't sequence the steps.
Yes.
And because I'm a grown adult, I can't really like demonstrate. But when his brother came, he's like, oh, I'm just going to do it, and did it. He was like,
oh, that's how it's done.
And then he did it. And then he continuously kept on doing it. And sometimes I find siblings push us and push the kids, and sometimes push them too far to a point that then we have a meltdown. And those are sometimes the best times because then we can, in a real life situation, I can show parents, this is how we regulate. This is how, listen, accidents happen, or, someone irritates someone, it's going to happen. How do we then calm everyone's bodies down? How do we work on that? Because seeing it is one thing versus me just telling you. And I often have this with parents because I'm passionate about regulation and, that emotional side of the sensory and emotional connection. And, I can tell parents, sit through the meltdowns. This is how you calm down. This is how you do it. And it's one thing. But then when a parent watches and I'm sitting there calm, breathing, watching, like reading your kids' cues, 30 minutes are going by.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know if you remember the one day we had a meltdown for
Yes.
shoes. 45 minutes we sat by the door crying.
Yeah.
And it was just showing how I can stay calm and how his body responds to that calm, which we don't believe until we see it.
Yes.
Because we're like, after 5 minutes, we're like, okay, this is enough.
This is enough now.
10 minutes, we're like, come on, what's going on?
Yeah.
But when we actually see it, and that's, I think, my big reason why I have parents in the room, because you have to see it to believe it.
Yeah.
The same thing about how OT looks like expensive play day.
Yes.
Only by you guys being in the
Yeah.
sessions did you actually click to be like, oh, that's why.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes, wait a minute, he didn't do that time.
Yes.
Where I
Yeah.
can always, send videos and I can explain it. But being in the presence
Yeah.
has a different effect.
Yeah. And what I love what you said regarding then 45 minutes went by trying to just, because the shoes were not placed where they needed to be placed, type of thing. And when I spoke to the dentist, it was one of the things that he really brought up is that these kids need time. Part of our job as parents is to start budgeting time into our lives, and we cannot expect things to move at the pace in which we see everything else move. And so just that lesson of, if we're going to regulate the situation, I actually just need to forget about what I was planning to do 15 minutes later until this is done. Because, and in that regulation, and what I've learned through having to just wrap my mind around and just be okay with it, that we started off at 45 minutes, but now I'm just like, my guy. And then he's just like, okay, he's done. We have the conversation. Tell me what is going on. And even getting to the point of past the tears to the conversation of, okay, what happened? What didn't you like? What did mama do wrong? Or what threw you off? So that I actually know. Now the times, now it's like 10 minutes now, 10 minutes. And then we understand. And when he knows that he's been heard, then he clicks and then he continues with life. So even that, being able to, the biggest thing about our kids is that we need to learn to budget time. And that time is going to be the biggest thing that we actually sit on, because that's when all the things come through. That's where the lessons come through. And so
we have to be that patient. Say, like, I think for parents, we are so uncomfortable with our own emotions and feelings that it's hard for us to sit.
True.
None of us want to sit. I mean, especially also in this day and age. Like, we can't just sit. We either have, like, waiting in a line. If you go anywhere, there's not one person that's sitting there without their phone or without doing something. Like, we can't sit anymore. You can't just be. And I think that's one thing we have to understand about the body, is that sometimes it needs just time to process. We can't rush it. And there was an amazing article about the first 7 minutes of your child's day sets them up for the rest of the day.
And I think our 7 minutes is, wake up!
You're very much. And literally, it's like, how can we budget those first 7 minutes to be like, wake up 15 minutes earlier so you can actually crawl into bed with them and hug them and slowly give them a kiss awake. Like, how can we actually start the day slower? Because that first 7 minutes is actually teaching the brain how the rest of the day is going to go. So if we start them with like, hey, it's like the brain's already like, oh my goodness, what's going on? And then they suddenly like freeze.
Yes,
and then we get
upset,
and then we're like, what's going on? And it just cascades.
Okay, I hear you.
Little...
Noting. And Sorry. I think it's a millennial parent thing also, because I had a conversation with my husband yesterday, because the teenager was due to be at school at 12. 10 past 12, this child is still fluffing her hair. And then my husband says to me, she has no sense of just urgency and time. And I said, you know what? I think it's us as parents. As millennials, we were taught we are moving.
Yes.
And now, all of a sudden, now this next generation of kids that we're birthing, what's the rush? And we are clashing so much in our house. And even just learning that we grew up in a time where we had to keep moving, and we're moving.
Yeah.
But now our kids are just like, what's the rush? Yeah. And we're being challenged, like you're saying, that we are such a mismatch.
So hard. No.
It is the biggest joke God decided to play on us.
No, it's really interesting how we go and how generations go in those waves.
Yes.
From like, from the time, and then we go from the emotional generation. Because I mean, I can think about the stories my mom told me about her mom.
Yes.
And the lack of emotional connection.
Yes.
And then we always try and like flick flack.
Yes.
So we try to be the opposite. And it's so hard to find that middle ground of like, okay, let us be time conscious, but let us not be too rushed.
Yes.
Let us be emotionally available, but let us also not
just be crybabies the
yeah,
whole day.
it's like we gotta have boundaries. We gotta also
Yes.
build a little bit of frustration tolerance.
Yes, be accountable also for emotions at
Yes.
times and the actions that
And
come
where's
from it,
that
from trying
balance?
to, I'm trying to find.
It's like human development. It's really hard. Sorry. Side
But
note.
no, it's okay. And if there's one thing that our neurodiverse kids teach us is nothing is what we assume it to be.
Mm-mm.
And they will challenge every single thing because they are literally opposite. The fact that we need time and time is the thing that we're always rushing for as parents. We got to be on time here. Traffic is going to take this long, and then this is how much time I actually have. No, we don't have time for that. We're always fighting time, and our kids need the time in order for them to actually just learn what we want them to learn or progress. And so also then going back to that other second part where we were talking about the duration, I think one of the things also that there's setting the goals and then seeing what is going to happen as we're going through the process and then reassessing and all of that. How long should I expect to be an OT for? Is there such a thing as it's only 3 years and then, or is it truly goal orientated and what it is that we're wanting? So it could take however long it needs to take, depending on the goal that we place.
And I think that's the one of the big things we look at is trying to change our view of success, trying to change our view of time. Like it's very much goal orientated. So there's a really nice use of goals. We call it the goal attainment scales, which means it's finding out from parents what do you want to see, and then using that as our yardstick. So we're not trying to look at what's age appropriate. We're trying to see what's applicable.
Okay.
But we also got to understand every child is different, and we're working on kind of your neurological systems. We're working on your brain. So for some kids, changes in certain areas will happen faster. For some kids, they're going to take longer. And especially children who are on, the spectrum, especially when we look at our communication and our emotional and more those abstract skills. Those are the longer ones because those are the ones that also kind of identify them to have those challenges. And I think when I look at OT and I say to parents, okay, we're going to work on set goals, some kids I worked with for 6 months. Some kids I've been on journeys for years. So it's all very different. But like I said to you earlier, I work on, okay, we're going to take 30 sessions. And standard or stereotypical OT is 24 to 30 sessions.
Okay.
So a lot of the times it's either once a week, which can then result into generally like 8 months. A lot of the research that comes out, and there's an amazing institute in America called the STAR Institute. And a lot of what their research shows is that the only research that's shown the best efficacy for treatment when they worked with children on the spectrum was 3 times a week. And they showed that if you work 3 times a week for 18 sessions for 6 weeks, the changes were the most dramatic. So a lot of the times we say when you start the process, you need to start a bit of an intensive approach. And then we're working on making those big sensory changes. So that intensive approach is more for that sensory work.
Shocking the system, basically.
Very much so. And I always said, it's like jump starting a car. You're not going to give accelerator unplug and come back next week. Like you need to really give a lot of input for there to be changes. And once you've done those big changes, then you can start working on the next level areas. But no kid is the same. And I find that some kids, the parents are like, all we want is X. And once we've worked on X, they're like, you know what, we've made our life around everything else. We're okay. We don't need more. And I'm like, that's great. If you do, I'm here. But if not, it's okay. And then for some kids, like our journey, we got to a point where like, we worked on a goal. We made our goal. We took a break. Then we came back and we're like, okay, cool. The school system, like we're on the next level. We need to now, instead of just working on his ability, we were first working on like the dressing, the hair, the more daily routines. Then we were like, okay, academics. Now we need to work a little bit on his ability to sit at the table and actually put his thoughts down on paper and drawing and more that side. So we worked on that, and we got to a point where we were like, we did really well. And this is more my personal belief, and I've shared this with you
Yeah.
guys, is that I also believe that your OT journey is going to be however long you need it to be.
Yes, yes,
But that also doesn't mean that you're going to be with the same person.
yes. You
And I
have,
mean,
yeah.
we kind of broke up
Yes.
last year.
Yeah.
Really sad. But to a point where I'm like, you know what? I have a bias of still seeing your child as that 3-year-old that I saw when I first met him.
Yes, yes.
And as much as he's changed, I've seen it. Sometimes you need a fresh look. Sometimes you need to
Yeah.
see him as the 6-year-old and clean slate and see more potential.
Okay.
Where I'm like, oh my goodness, have you not seen how far we've gone?
Yes.
Where you sometimes need to make that change.
Okay.
So for me, your journey is going to be however long you need it to
Okay.
be.
Okay.
And as long as you continuously feel like we're working towards something,
Yeah.
and we're not just in a boat on a river because we're there.
Yeah.
It should never
Okay.
be that. It should be like, that's our goal.
Okay.
These are the steps we're going towards.
Okay. Have you ever told parents that's not a goal? In the sense that I don't want to call it superficial goals, but a goal where we are setting ourselves up for failure.
So more like an unrealistic goal.
Yes, yes.
So it's also then my job to say, okay, if you want X to be your goal, I can say, I hear you.
Yeah.
This is where we could get to.
Okay.
Okay. So we might not be able to get to, like, if you want him to make a gourmet meal, I'd
Yeah.
be like, listen, we can get him to make an edible meal. Like, that's a
Yes.
realistic goal.
Yes.
Because we don't want to set you up for
Yes.
a failure. And
Yeah.
my job as a therapist is to also keep your child. I'm not here to make you happy. I'm here to help your child.
Yes.
He's my goal. I'm on his team.
Yes.
And sometimes I've had to have those difficult conversations with parents to say,
Yeah.
listen, that's either not something he's interested in or he's capable. Also, sometimes, we've worked so much on him, we now need to start working on you.
Yeah.
And sometimes we have to have those conversations
Yeah.
to say, I've regulated him, but I can see that you are really struggling with regulation.
Yes. Yes.
How can we help you
Yeah.
so that you can help him?
Yeah.
So as a therapist, your goal is always the kid.
Yeah.
Your goal, that's who your person
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
The parents, we're all on a team, and sometimes you have to say to your teammates, let's all kind of get on the same page,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
how can we help each other?
And the reason why I asked that also is because, especially when you're a parent of a child who's on the spectrum, and I said this in a previous conversation, there is a lot that you have to let go of and go through the process of, I had a vision and a desire for this kid. So when I found out that we were going to have this kid and we're growing this kid for 9 months, we are dreaming. This kid is born, and because they do not have a physical disability coming out of the womb, we only click at 18 months, 2 years, that something doesn't make sense. So we've seen this child is developing well in all other aspects of them being an infant, being a baby, being they get to toddler phase. And then that's when the wheels start to fall off. And so there's a grieving process that needs to happen. And part of that are the goals in which you desire and set for your child. So, which is why I asked that question of when we come in and we ask, because I remember, like, my husband his first goal was, I just want him to be able to communicate with me. Now we're at a point now where he's so cheeky. My husband's just like, wow, yes, we got what we wanted.
I didn't really expect it in this way.
In actually this way. But it was that simple for him. He was just like, I want him to be able to just communicate, let me know what he needs. And my goal was, I actually don't think I even had a goal. I was like, I actually don't know this child. I actually don't know who you are. And I'm just walking through this process to figure out what you can and cannot do. And then we are going to go through that. And I think it was one of the difficult questions I had to, because when you asked us and when Motlale asked us, okay, what is the goal? I was like, I don't know.
I just want him to be happy.
I just want him to be happy, because it's such a difficult thing, because you don't know. So that's why I asked that question. So that there's someone telling me from the outside that you still need to go and do the work within yourself. I still need to go back and I still need to lay down all the things that I still hold, and even if I hold them in the back of my mind, they kind of trickle in some shape and form. And just to really just have just a clean, open slate. Let's focus on just him how does he function in the world? Let's just start with just being able to function in the world. And then as we grow and as we go, then we can add in the different goals because now we're starting to learn who this kid is.
And I think that's a beautiful way you ask in terms of also sometimes you don't know.
Yeah.
And you're sometimes also too scared to be able to say what you want,
Yeah,
what your dream is,
yeah.
because what happens if it's not possible? Or what happens if it's you then think, okay, am I expecting too much? Am I being
Yes.
unrealistic? And I always say to parents, this is a process. You're grieving. You are
Yeah.
allowed to also say your expectations. You're allowed to have these hopes and dreams. It's really okay. We are then going to see, okay, how is this going to look? So I love how, like, I remember when he said he's like, I want him to communicate. And I'm like, great. He communicates now.
He communicates now.
He does not do long speeches.
Yeah.
But we understand him. And that's the big shift I think parents have to have is that you say communicate. What does that look like?
Yeah.
So that's a big thing with children on the spectrum is that we don't take kind of the norm, like what the stereotypical view.
Yeah.
We're like, okay, nonverbals, that's so important. Not all communication is just language.
Yes.
And it was just something so interesting. I saw a status of a mom of a kid I worked with like 7 years ago. And I remember having the conversation with her of like, I just want my child to be independent. I want him to be able to look after himself. And I saw, and he has just gotten a job in a meat packing kind of, and it's called a supportive employment.
Yes.
So, but he is there sticking labels on burgers.
Yeah.
And he is doing something that he can do and bringing some income in. And, it may not have been the job that, we originally anticipated, but it is a job. And I think that's the shift of being like, okay, cool. I want X. What ways can X look like?
Yes.
Because X is not only one way.
Yeah.
So communication is not just talking.
Yeah.
Communication is different. And I think that's also like I said, with my dad and his stroke, I had to learn that communication because he can't speak in full sentences. And I've had to learn facial expressions. And I think that's also maybe why I love working with kids and because that skill is improved. Like I had to, when my dad said one word, I had to kind of fill in every single gap. What was going on? Am I in trouble? Am I not in trouble? What's going on? But it really teaches you that what we think things should look like are not necessarily how they are.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, to round off our conversation, what do you want parents to know? So under the banner of it's going to be okay. When I step into this OT space, what do you want them to know about doing this journey? What do you want them to be okay with?
Big question. I think one of my big things is, when we see a child on the spectrum, there are so many like behaviors that everyone sees from the outside. And I want parents to understand the why behind what their kid is doing.
Okay.
So, if we're hyper fixated on Sonic, it's something that we love. And the why, okay, because I understand it's predictable, it feels safe. Okay, now how can we use that to help you grow? To understand, okay, remember when you started making those alien sounds? And we were doing certain things. Why are we doing it? What is his body trying to tell? And I think that's my big thing for any kid and parent that comes in here is I want them to understand the why behind what their child is doing so we can better understand their kid and help support them. And to know that we take your child and whatever package they come in, and our job is not to change the package. Okay? I'm not here to make your child into a certain picture.
Yes.
I'm here to understand who they are, why are they doing what they're doing, and how can I then help their body life just feel easier.
Okay. I love that. Thank you, Nicole.
Pleasure.
Thank you for the journey that we've had. I always say that I had, and I continue to have the best team of people around my kid. Thank you for even being strict on us at times. Get on the floor and play. Just like, do you understand my bones? Don't make it down there. But
I helped you get up at least.
Now, when we play at home, it is unacceptable for me to be sitting on the couch. On the floor, Mama. On the floor. But thank you for that. Thank you for just allowing us the space to not know and be confused and fumble around and not judge us for it, but just take us along the journey. And thank you for loving my boy. I mean, even to this day, even though we drive past the school, drop off his sister, he's just like, that's teacher Nicole's car. When are we going to teacher Nicole? I'm like, my child, you were docked off already last year. You're fine. You're not going back. So now we're trying to find, do we need to work on food? Maybe we need to bring him back. But thank you. Thank you for this. Thank you for making a scary journey less scary because of the information that you allowed and just the safety. I think that's the thing, the safety that you allowed for all of us in the process.
And thank you for trusting me with your kid. I think that's the biggest thing for me. Is when parents actually trust and let's do this together. You guys are awesome. I miss you guys.